Okay, so I'm going to apologize now for the shaky beginning, but I'm just going to show you how to put your plate in the Opera Phoenix. So you're going to start by going to the top right corner here, and you're going to hit eject. This eject will then put this little plate out. So the first thing you're going to do is I just take a chem light. I just wipe the bottom of my plate, make sure there's nothing on there. Get a big piece of parafilm on there. Okay, so just gonna make sure there's nothing on there. And then I'm going to put my plate on the plate reader tray here thing. And there's these 8 little clips that it sits between. So I like to wiggle it in between to just make sure that it's not sitting like on top. If it's like that, then it's not going to wiggle. So you want that nice even wiggle. So now you go back to the Opera Phoenix, you go back to the same button, and you're going to do load. Now let's see if I can. Okay, so now I put my plate in the Opera Phoenix. You want to start by going to setup in the top left here. Go to new, which will erase all of the prior settings here. So now the first thing you need is your plate type. So let me just look up real quick what plate type I'm using. Okay, so I had forgotten what the plate name was. So what I did is I went to image analysis, measurement, and then I found a prior experiment that I know I use the same plate. It says right here, plate type 96 grainer plastic bottom. So I can just hit OK. Now if I go back to setup, all of the parameters from that experiment automatically load here. So I can see that I use Hoax, Alexa 568. I'm going to go back to new to just start fresh. I know I want the 96 grainer plastic bottom. The 2-peak is the default. I'm going to image this particular experiment on 2x water. I'm going to use confocal. Binning, the default is 2. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to add my channels, get the little plus sign. So for this experiment, I have host. Just be careful because one is the extended. And then the Alexa 568 is the other one I have. So for now, I leave these as the default. Okay, so the first thing I do is I go up to settings over here, and I create my assay layout. So for this particular experiment, my compound is just my BCC serum. This one is E2, and this one is PPT, and then this just repeats for the whole plate. I can just copy and paste as needed. Concentrations, I have 0, 0.1, and 3. So again, I can just copy and paste all of these. Some more. My cell type, these are MTF7s. Just copy that. The other thing that you can do here, if you wanted to make these different colors, each treatment a different color, you can select the colors down here. I'll show you where that shows up. So you can hit save. So I can just call it usually just call it the date and roughly what I'm doing. Okay, do you want to load the assay layout onto the setup screen? Yes. Also, this plate is fixed, but if your plate is live, then you want to go to TCO settings and you want to turn on the CO2 and the temperature. From there, so you're going to come out of that. So now here, this is where I added the colors. So if you select, you can see where the different colors are here. So I just need to quickly put my plate back in. So now I randomly select a well, I hit select. Because I have cells over my entire bottom, I can just leave this as the default. We pretty much just want to check a random one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check what Z height is best. So I'm going to start at -10. I'm going to basically go to 19. And so I'm going to do a Z slices every 1 microns for 30 microns. And I'm going to use in test. So now I'm just going to hit test. So use a single well. So this likes to be orange, orange, and then hit test. As soon as I hit test, I come over here to my imaging tab. I'm going to select my well. So once this images, the first time it takes a couple minutes to acquiring image alignment parameters is what it's doing, what it says it's doing anyways. So as I go through the Z slices, I'm going to be looking for the intensity of my 2 channels as well as which Z slice is the best, has the best intensity as well as what looks the best. And this can be different. So say that you have, your cell isn't going to be completely flat. So your nuclei can be bigger than your cytoplasm. So your nuclei might be a couple microns above your cytoplasm stain. So that's okay if your Z slice heights are different. And we're going to enter that information here under height on the left. So you want to make sure this is orange, and then use Z slice is orange, it turns blue as it images. So you can see this is out of focus here, but I like to see my intensity. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to see where my intensity is the highest. And you'll also see that it starts looking a little bit nicer. So as you see, my nuclear stain, this one right here, at 5 microns has the highest intensity. This one's at 3. The bottom of the plate, in theory, is perfectly flat, but not always. So this one's at 4. This one is also at 4 down here. This one's at 4. So most frequently they seem to be at 4, and as you go through, you can look at the whole field. It looks pretty good here at 4. The other thing that I like to have my intensity above 2,000, so anywhere from 2 to 3,000. You can see that on the edges it's a little bit lower, so I will bump this up a tiny bit just to get some of these dimmer ones to be a little bit higher. And you can see that the background is significantly different than where your nuclei actually are, which is the most important part. Okay, so for hoax, we're going to do 4 microns, and we're just going to bump this up. Maybe we'll do 100. We'll keep this here. Let's just do 56. I don't know. It's kind of random. You just kind of select numbers and then retest and see where you're at. So in here on the right is where you toggle between the 2 channels. So here's my other channel, is my rhodamine phalloidin. So you can see there's a clear difference between where my cells are and where they are not. So again, I want this ideally above 2,000. So I'm just gonna bump this up a little bit. Where I should start first is looking at my brightest D, because that might be different. So for this one, it is 4. Let's check over here. So this one is also 4. This one is actually 2. You can kind of tell, you can, look by eye too. So we'll just stick with 4 for this one as well. So now I like to, and you can look at them both together to see how they look. The other thing I should mention is that what you see on the screen, the intensity never changes. So you can look here, but there's 3 different ways to look at it. There's standard, enhanced, and highlight. I like highlight because I can see where the background is as well as what I want. And if you look as I go through, it changes these 3, the max, the gamma, and the min. And so you can manually play with these yourself as well. So just remember that whatever you see on the screen isn't real. The only thing real is the actual intensities. If you want to save a picture of this, you can just right click and save image. And then hit this little box to go back to auto contrast. And I like to highlight just so I can see where everything is. So I'm going to do another test. I'm going to go to another well. I'm going to select a different well. I'm going to do another test. And I could have eliminated some of the Z slice, but it images pretty quick, so that's okay. So then if you're sitting here and you're like, why isn't it doing anything? You gotta go to test images and then select everything. So this well doesn't have as much. We'll also look at the intensities. For this one, this is at 3 for the hoax. Down here at 2. I'm just going to pick a different well and do another test. So I'll put this on the nuclei. This one's at 5. for my hopes. Unit 4 is just fine. So now I'm just going to click around for my staining. Like I said, I want this to be, well, actually, I'm only doing a nuclear count for this one, so this is totally fine. But sometimes I usually do want it a little bit higher. Just make sure that these are all, so for the most part, these are all above 2,000. So it's a balance between these really bright ones, which white on this doesn't mean overexpressed. It's just how the software does it. You know, I could bump this up ever so slightly, and I could bump this one up ever so slightly as well. And now I can hit reset, and here it's got 4 microns, 4 microns. I can select a totally different well, and I can retest. Go to my test image tab. Now there's no Z height because I'm just imaging at the one height. So the big difference, the most important part is this significantly different than this? And it is, so I'm not too worried about the fact that some of these are lower. And then for whatever reason, this stain is really low in this well, which is why we check multiple wells. So I'm actually just going to bump this one up some, just so that it's bright enough in all of the wells. So once I'm happy with this, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to define my layout. I know this is where I have my cells. I want nuclear counts. So I can do that, or I can do that. If you go field center, you can kind of select a bigger piece of the well. And over here it says max duration. It's going to take 1 hour and 1 minute to image all of these squares in all of these wells with these settings. So if I wanted to increase my power to 100% and reduce the time, I could to save time. So let's just play with this. Let's just bump this up to 100%. I guess I'm holding 80. Select a random well, and you can do test again. Test image. Yeah, so you can see the intensity still looks pretty good. Some of these are a little bit low, but I think that's okay. All right, so I'm happy with this setting. It's going to take less time. So now it's going to take, so that actually only reduced 2 minutes. So it doesn't matter so much, but that's okay. just gonna change this back because I think right now the laser is broken. So I'm gonna save this. Okay, so once you're satisfied, go over here, name your plate. And you just hit start. So I like to sit here and wait till it actually does start. And actually, one thing I forgot, I'm going to stop it because you always want to wipe the bottom of your plate. So I'm going to just eject it real quick, wipe the bottom of the plate to remove any water droplets from the prior casting that I had done. Loading my plate back in. So now I'm going to hit start again. So I always wait until this actually starts and just make sure that I'm happy with how it's imaging. You can see this well, it's very sparse. But different ways you can look at it as a whole well. You can select everything that's been imaged already, right click, plate and well packed, plate and well realistic is what I would use for 2D. You can basically see these are the wells that are already imaged. There is, we'll have flat tail parchment available. There is stitching, which isn't as obvious because there's not that many. But you also have these controls here as well to change how it looks. Again, you can right click, save image. Here's a better view of the whole well. See a little better, you can just do highlight. Now that this will just run, this will do its thing. And again, you can check your numbers to make sure that you're the right ballpark. Now I'm just gonna let that run. Don't forget to come back after roughly an hour and a half and stop your session in iLab. If you don't come back an hour and a half, then that's okay too. You can make a note in iLab that says what time it finished imaging. So I know some of us leave it overnight image. Just to make sure that you end your iLab session. Okay, that is imaging in the 2D plate.